12 students floated in their seats, held down by magnetic clips on their uniforms. The classroom existed inside a spinning ring of Station Horizon 7, creating just enough artificial gravity to keep everyone comfortable. Commander Yalith stood at the front, her 4 arms moving across the holographic display with practiced ease. Her blue skin glowed softly in the dim light, patterns shifting like stars whenever she felt a strong emotion. "Today we discuss species compatibility with microgravity environments," she announced. Her voice carried the weight of 30 years teaching at the Galactic Transit Academy. Priya Sharma sat in the 3rd row between her 2 human classmates. D1 was on her left, his tablet already recording the lecture. Lucia sat on her right, arms crossed, jaw tight. They had heard variations of this lecture before. Yalith pulled up a chart showing dozens of species ranked by their natural zero-gravity abilities. The Morvathi sat at the top, their bodies equipped with natural gas jet organs that let them propel through space like living rockets. The Kelish ranked 2nd, their long prehensile tails giving them excellent grip and momentum control. Humans appeared near the bottom, just above the rock-dwelling Gravashi who could barely function without solid ground beneath them. "Humans present a unique challenge," Yalith continued. She pulled up an image of a human skeleton. "Evolved as ground-dwelling primates on a high-gravity world, their inner ear systems require gravitational reference points. Without them, humans experience severe disorientation, nausea, and spatial confusion." A Morvathi student named Oskith made a sound that might have been a laugh. His gray body rippled with amusement. "Perhaps the humans should practice in the children's training pool first." Some students laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. Priya kept her face neutral, but her fingers began tapping against her thigh. D1 recognized the rhythm immediately. It was the countdown sequence she used before her competition routines, back when she was one of the top gymnasts in South Asia. "I am not suggesting humans cannot function in zero gravity," Yalith said, though her tone suggested exactly that. "However, statistics show that human students fail the practical examination at rates 40% higher than the galactic average. This is simply biology." She brought up several academic papers on the display, studies from the first decades of human space travel, showing astronauts vomiting, losing spatial awareness, struggling to complete basic tasks. The data was real. It was also almost 200 years old. "Tomorrow you will complete your practical examination in the zero-G chamber," Yalith announced. "You must navigate the obstacle course, retrieve 3 casualty dummies, and return them to the safe zone. Fastest completion time determines your ranking." Lucia leaned toward Priya. "She is using studies from before my grandmother was born," she whispered. "My grandmother lived on the International Space Station for 8 months. She did not fail at anything." Priya nodded slightly but said nothing. She had learned long ago that words meant little, performance meant everything. "For those species with lower compatibility ratings," Yalith continued, looking directly at the human section, "I recommend spending tonight reviewing the emergency protocols. Knowing when to call for assistance is not weakness, it is wisdom." Oskith raised one of his tentacle-like appendages. "Commander, perhaps the humans should be given modified expectations. For safety reasons, of course. We would not want anyone to get hurt." More laughter from certain corners of the room. A Kelish student named Freeth wrapped her tail around her seat in discomfort. She had trained alongside the humans for months and knew they were more capable than the data suggested. "I will consider appropriate accommodations," Yalith said. Priya finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but clear. "That will not be necessary, Commander." The room went silent. Yalith's bioluminescent patterns flickered with surprise. Students rarely challenged her directly. "I appreciate your confidence," Yalith said slowly, "but I have seen many students overestimate their abilities. The zero-G chamber has humbled far more than it has celebrated." "I understand," Priya replied. "We will take the standard examination, no modifications." D1 and Lucia both nodded their agreement. Oskith made another amused sound, but quieter this time. Something in Priya's calm certainty made him slightly uncertain. Yalith studied the three humans for a long moment. She had seen determination before. She had also seen determination shatter against the reality of spinning helplessly through open space, unable to tell up from down, left from right. "Very well," she said finally. "Class dismissed. Rest well tonight. Tomorrow we'll test everything you think you know about movement." Students began floating toward the exit, their magnetic clips releasing with soft clicks. Priya remained seated for a moment, watching Yalith's patterns shift through colors she could not name. The commander believed what she taught. She was not cruel, merely confident in data that told an incomplete story. Priya had faced judges like this her entire athletic career. People who looked at her small frame and assumed limitations. People who watched her step onto the competition floor and expected adequate performance. They never expected excellence. She released her magnetic clip and floated toward the exit. D1 and Lucia fell in beside her, and together the three humans moved through the corridor toward their quarters. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and tomorrow Priya would remind everyone that humans had been defying gravity since long before they left Earth. The human quarters aboard Station Horizon 7 were small but comfortable. 3 bunks stacked against one wall, a shared workspace on the other, and just enough room for 3 people who had become something like family over the past 6 months of training. Lucia sat on the floor with her back against the wall, working her way through a bag of freeze-dried mango. Stress eating, she called it. D1 occupied the desk, his tablet covered in trajectory calculations and physics formulas, and Priya hung upside down from a ceiling rail, stretching her spine in ways that looked painful but felt wonderful. 40% failure rate, Lucia muttered between bites. She said humans fail 40% more than average. What does that even mean? 40% of what? It means her data is old, D1 replied without looking up. Those studies she referenced were conducted between 2089 and 2134. Early astronauts with minimal training, using primitive equipment. Nobody uses that research anymore except people looking for excuses. Priya pulled herself upright and sat on the rail like a bird on a branch. She believes it, though. She is not trying to insult us. She genuinely thinks she is protecting us. From what? From proving ourselves? Lucia crumpled the empty bag. My grandmother spent 8 months on the old International Space Station. She performed spacewalks. She repaired equipment while floating in nothing. She did not have fancy alien technology or gas-jet organs. She had training and courage. D1 finally looked up from his calculations. That is exactly the point. Humans have been training for zero gravity since before first contact. We have over 200 years of development that the galactic community knows nothing about. Priya dropped from the rail and landed softly on her feet. 12 years of competitive gymnastics had given her a relationship with gravity that most people could not understand. Gravity was not her master. It was her dance partner, and she had learned long ago that dance partners could be led. Tell me about your military training, she said to D1. The zero-G combat programs. He leaned back in his chair. South Korean space defense started developing techniques in the 2180s. Japan, America, China, India, they all had similar programs. By the time we made first contact, we had soldiers who could fight in complete microgravity. Hand-to-hand combat, weapons handling, tactical movement, all without using thrusters. Lucia nodded. The instructors here think thrusters are essential. They do not understand kinetic transfer, momentum conservation, using your own body as a propulsion system. Because their species never needed to learn, Priya said. The Morvathi have gas jets built into their bodies. The Kelish have tails for grip. They evolved for their environments. We evolved for one environment and then forced ourselves to master every other environment through practice. She walked to the small viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere beyond that glass was the zero-G chamber, a sphere 200 meters across, filled with obstacles and floating targets. Tomorrow it would be filled with students trying to prove themselves. When I was competing, Priya said quietly, We train for something called spatial disorientation. Gymnastics involves a lot of blind movement. Backflips, twists, rotations where you cannot see where you are going. You have to know where your body is in space without looking. Without feeling gravity pull you down. We called it proprioceptive memory. D1 nodded slowly. Your body learns its own position. Yes, I would close my eyes during training and perform my entire floor routine without visual reference. I always knew where I was, where my arms were, where my legs were. The angle of my spine, the rotation of my hips, all of it perfectly mapped in my mind. Lucia stood up and stretched. So tomorrow, when Yalith expects us to panic because we cannot tell up from down. There is no up or down, Priya finished. There is only position and momentum, and I have been training for this my entire life without knowing it. The three humans looked at each other. They had arrived at the academy as strangers from different countries, different backgrounds, different careers. 6 months later, they understood each other in ways that their alien classmates never would. They shared a species, yes. But more than that, they shared a heritage of adaptation that stretched back through millions of years of evolution. Humans had climbed trees before they had language. They had swum rivers before they had tools. They had tumbled and jumped and thrown themselves through the air in every possible configuration, learning to control their bodies in ways that no other Earth animal could match. Gymnastics, diving, parkour, martial arts. All of it was training for movement through three-dimensional space. Zero gravity was just the final examination. We are not going to pass tomorrow, D1 said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. We are going to show them something they have never seen before. Priya smiled. It was the same smile she used to wear before stepping onto the competition floor. The smile that told judges she was not there to participate. She was there to win. Get some sleep, she told her friends. Tomorrow we fly. She climbed into her bunk and closed her eyes. In her mind, she ran through her old floor routine one more time. The music played in her memory. Her body remembered every jump, every twist, every landing. Tomorrow there would be no floor, no gravity, no music. But the dance would be the same, and Priya Sharma had never lost a dance in her life. The zero-G chamber looked like the inside of a massive metal ball, 200 meters across, painted in sections of different colors to help with orientation. Floating obstacles hung throughout the space. Metal beams, netting sections, spinning platforms. 3 dummy figures were positioned at different locations, each one representing a crew member who needed rescue. 12 students floated at the entrance platform, their maneuvering suits fitted and checked. The suits had small thrusters built into the back, shoulders, and boots. Most species relied on these thrusters completely. They were the safe way to move. Through microgravity, Commander Yalith floated beside the platform, her 4 arms holding a tablet and a timing device. Her bioluminescent patterns glowed steady blue, the color of professional focus. The rules are simple, she announced. Enter the chamber, retrieve all 3 casualty dummies, return them to this platform. Fastest time wins top ranking. There is no penalty for using emergency protocols if you become disoriented. Safety is more important than speed. She looked at the human students as she said this. Priya kept her face calm. Oskith, you will go first. The Morvathi student pushed off from the platform with confidence. His gray body rippled as the gas jets along his sides activated. He shot forward into the chamber, leaving trails of vapor behind him. His movements were sharp and direct. He did not need to touch anything because his body was its own propulsion system. The class watched as Oskith navigated through the obstacles. He bumped against a few spinning platforms but recovered quickly. Within 2 minutes, he had collected the first dummy. By 3 minutes, he had the second. The third dummy was positioned in the most difficult location, spinning freely in open space with no surfaces nearby. Oskith used his gas jets to match the spin, grabbed the dummy, and then fired his jets to counter the rotation. It was efficient but expensive. His jets were running low by the time he returned to the platform. 4 minutes 22 seconds, Yalith announced. Excellent performance, Oscath, well within acceptable range. Oscath looked pleased with himself. He glanced at the humans as he rejoined the waiting students. His expression suggested they should take notes. Freeth went next. The Kellish student used her prehensile tail like a fifth limb, grabbing rails and obstacles to swing herself through the chamber. Her method was slower than Oscath's raw power, but more elegant. She finished in 4 minutes and 8 seconds. Other students followed. A Bavathi got tangled in the netting and required rescue. 2 students finished with respectable times around 5 minutes. 1 student experienced disorientation and had to be guided back by automatic safety systems. Finally, Yalith turned to the humans. For safety monitoring purposes, I would like you to go one at a time. Which of you would like to begin? Priya raised her hand. I will go first. She floated to the starting position at the edge of the platform. Her maneuvering suit felt strange, like wearing clothes that did not fit. She had practiced with the thrusters during training sessions, but they felt clumsy, external, wrong. Begin when ready, Yalith said, starting her timer. Priya took a single breath. She closed her eyes for just a moment, feeling the position of every part of her body. Her arms at her sides, her legs together, her spine straight. She knew exactly where she was in space, even with her eyes closed. Then she opened her eyes and pushed off from the platform. The push looked casual, lazy almost. Several students exchanged confused looks, but Priya had calculated the exact force needed to send her toward the first obstacle at maximum efficient speed. She did not activate her thrusters at all. She flew through the empty space, approaching a metal beam. Instead of slowing down with thrusters, she reached out, grabbed the beam, and used it to redirect her momentum. Her body swung around the beam like she was performing on uneven bars. When she released, she was heading in a new direction at even greater speed. Oscath's confident expression faltered. What is she doing? She was not using her thrusters at all. Instead, she was bouncing off obstacles, redirecting momentum, using her own body as the engine. Every surface became a launching point. Every spin converted energy into direction. The first dummy was positioned near a cluster of spinning platforms. Any normal approach would require slowing down, carefully matching rotation, grabbing the dummy, then accelerating away. Priya did none of these things. She tucked her body into a tight ball, turning herself into a spinning projectile. She calculated angles that seemed impossible. She bounced off one platform, then another, absorbing momentum and redirecting it. When she reached the dummy, she was moving fast enough to grab it and continue without stopping. The class fell silent. Even Yalith's bioluminescent patterns had stopped shifting, frozen in something that looked like shock. Priya cradled the dummy against her chest and kicked off from a nearby beam. The second dummy was trapped in a simulated debris field, surrounded by floating obstacles with gaps that seemed too narrow for a human body. She did not slow down. She twisted her shoulders, rotated her hips, and threaded through gaps that should have been impossible. Gymnastics had taught her that her body was more flexible than it looked. Years of training had given her perfect awareness of her own dimensions. 2 minutes had passed. She had 2 dummies and was heading for the third. The third dummy was the hardest one, spinning in open space with nothing nearby to grab. The only way to reach it was pure thruster power. Or so everyone thought. Priya pulled back her arm and threw the second dummy toward the platform. The throw was perfect. The dummy sailed through the air and landed in the safe zone without bouncing. But Priya did not watch it land. She was already moving in the opposite direction, using the reaction force from her throw to propel herself toward the spinning third dummy. Newton's laws. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. She had thrown the dummy one way, and her body moved the other way. She reached the spinning dummy and wrapped her arms and legs around it. Her body became a counterweight, using her mass to cancel the rotation. Within seconds, the spin stopped. She aimed herself at the platform. And she flew. Commander Yalith stared at her instruments and wondered if they were broken. The human's heart rate showed only slight elevation. Her breathing was controlled, rhythmic. Her body temperature had barely increased. Every biological sign said she was comfortable, relaxed, almost bored. This should have been impossible. Yalith had watched hundreds of students attempt this examination. First-timers always showed stress. Elevated heart rates, rapid breathing, spikes in adrenaline. The zero-G chamber was designed to challenge, to frighten, to reveal which students could handle the pressure of real emergency situations. But Priya Sharma moved through the chamber like she was born there. She had already collected 2 dummies. She had thrown one of them into the safe zone from across the chamber, using the reaction force to propel herself toward the 3rd target. Now she was approaching the final dummy, the one that had given every other student trouble. The other students watched in silence. Oskith's confidence had completely disappeared. Freeth had her tail wrapped tightly around the platform rail, her eyes wide with surprise. Even the students who had failed their examinations were paying attention now. Priya reached the spinning dummy and wrapped herself around it. Her arms and legs formed a cage, trapping the dummy against her chest. The momentum transfer happened instantly. Her body mass absorbed the rotation, and within seconds the spin stopped completely. She had used her own body as a counterweight, simple physics, but executing it required perfect awareness of her own position, rotation, and mass distribution. One small error would have sent her spinning out of control. No error came. Priya Sharma did not make errors. She pushed off from nothing, using only the final bits of momentum she had stored in her muscles. She aimed for the platform. She was carrying the dummy like it weighed nothing, because in zero gravity it did weigh nothing. Only mass mattered, and mass only affected how hard you needed to push. The class watched her approach. She was coming in fast, too fast, some thought. Without thrusters to brake, she would slam into the platform hard enough to hurt herself. Yalith almost activated the safety systems. Her finger hovered over the emergency button. But something made her wait. Some instinct told her this human knew exactly what she was doing. Priya was 50 meters from the platform, 30 meters, 20 meters, still not slowing down. At 10 meters, she moved. Her body twisted in a way that seemed to violate physics. She rotated backward, flipping herself so her feet faced the platform instead of her head. Her legs bent, preparing to absorb impact. Her arms cradled the dummy against her chest. She landed. Her feet touched the platform softly. Her knees bent to absorb the remaining momentum. Her body rolled slightly, redirecting the last bits of kinetic energy into horizontal movement instead of vertical impact. When she stood upright, she was perfectly still, perfectly balanced. The dummy was safe in her arms. Yalith looked at her timer, looked again, checked the recording to make sure. 2 minutes 47 seconds, she announced. Her voice sounded strange even to herself. Silence filled the chamber. Oskith had finished in 4 minutes, 22 seconds. Freeth had finished in 4 minutes, 8 seconds. The best time from any student this year had been 3 minutes, 50 seconds. Priya Sharma had just beaten the academy record by over a minute. And she had done it without using her thrusters once. The first dummy, D1 said, breaking the silence. It landed in the safe zone. Should that count as retrieved? Yalith checked her sensors. The dummy was indeed sitting in the safe zone. Priya had thrown it there with perfect accuracy from across. The chamber. Yes, Yalith said slowly. That counts. Priya placed the 3rd dummy in the safe zone and floated back toward her classmates. Her expression was calm. Not smug or arrogant. Just calm, like this was exactly what she had expected to happen. How? Oskith demanded. You did not use your thrusters. The suit's propulsion log shows 0 activation. How did you move without propulsion? Priya looked at him with genuine patience. I did use propulsion, just not the suit's propulsion. What propulsion? Kinetic transfer, momentum conservation. Every surface I touched became a launching point. Every throw I made pushed me in the opposite direction. My body is the propulsion system. The suit is just backup. Oscath opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. What she described was theoretically possible. Everyone learned the physics in basic training, but nobody actually moved that way. Nobody could calculate those trajectories in real time while maintaining body position, rotation, and orientation. Nobody except humans, apparently. Yalith found her voice again. "Lucia Reyes, you may proceed when ready." Lucia pushed off from the platform with a confident grin. She did not move exactly like Priya. Her style was different, developed from years of pilot training rather than gymnastics. But the result was similar. She bounced off surfaces, redirected momentum, and completed the course in 3 minutes and 12 seconds. D1 went last. His approach was more methodical, more calculated. He paused at certain points to consider his angles, but his final time was still 3 minutes, 31 seconds. All 3 humans had finished in the top 4 times. All 3 had beaten every alien student, except none had beaten them. The academy record belonged to Priya Sharma, and she had not even broken a sweat. The safe zone platform felt crowded now. 12 students floated in loose formation around Commander Yalith, who had not spoken in nearly a minute. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted through colors that her students had never seen before. Confusion, perhaps, or surprise so deep it had no name. Oscath finally broke the silence. His voice was sharp with frustration and something that might have been fear. "This is not possible. Humans cannot perform like this. The data clearly shows that your species lacks the biological equipment for zero-gravity excellence." Priya floated nearby, her breathing. "Still calm, what data?" "The studies, the research. Commander Yalith showed us the papers. Humans experience severe disorientation, nausea, spatial confusion." Oscath's gray body rippled with agitation. "You should have failed. All 3 of you should have failed." "Those studies were conducted over 150 years ago," D1 said. His voice was patient, like a teacher explaining simple math to a confused student. "The first humans in space had almost no training. They were scientists and pilots, not athletes. They learned to survive in microgravity, but surviving is different from mastering." Lucia nodded. "My grandmother was an astronaut on the International Space Station. That was almost 2 centuries ago. Even then, humans were learning to move efficiently in zero gravity. We have had 200 years of development since then." Freeth, the Kellish student, unwrapped her tail from the platform rail. "The techniques you used," she said slowly. "We are not taught those techniques at this academy. Where did you learn them?" "Different places," Priya replied. "I trained as a competitive gymnast for 12 years. Gymnastics teaches you to know where your body is in space without looking. We call it proprioceptive awareness. When you are spinning through the air during a complicated tumbling pass, you cannot rely on your eyes. You cannot rely on gravity. You have to feel your position from inside." "Military training," D1 added. "Human military forces have been developing zero-gravity combat techniques for over a century. Hand-to-hand fighting, weapons handling, tactical movement, all without using thrusters." Oscath made a sound of disbelief. "You train soldiers to fight in zero gravity. Why would anyone do that?" "Because humans prepare for everything," Lucia said. "We do not wait for a situation to happen and then figure out how to handle it. We train for situations that might never happen, just in case." Yalith finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost humble. "My research was incomplete. I apologize." The words hung in the air. An instructor apologizing to students was rare. An instructor admitting error was even rarer. "The studies I cited were accurate for their time," Yalith continued. "But I did not consider how human training methods might have evolved since then. I did not consider that humans might develop techniques that do not rely on biological advantages." She turned to face Priya directly. "You moved through that chamber like water flowing through pipes. Every surface was a tool. Every obstacle was an opportunity. I have never seen any species move like that." "That is because no other species needed to learn," Priya said gently. "You evolved gas jets. Freeth evolved a prehensile tail. Your bodies came equipped with the tools you needed. Human bodies came equipped with nothing, just soft skin and weak muscles and bones that break too easily. She gestured at the zero-G chamber behind them. So we learned to use everything else as our tools, every surface, every object, every angle of momentum. Humans have been doing this for millions of years, long before we ever left Earth. Climbing trees, swimming rivers, throwing rocks, jumping over obstacles. We learned to make our environment work for us because our bodies alone were never enough. Osgoth was quiet now. The frustration had faded from his rippling gray skin. In its place was something that looked almost like respect. The Morvathi developed gas jets because our homeworld has low gravity, he said slowly. We evolved for our environment. You are saying that humans evolved to master any environment. Yes, Priya said simply. Yalith looked at her timer one last time. 3 human students, 3 top 4 finishes, 1 academy record that would probably stand for years. I will need to revise my curriculum, she said. The techniques you demonstrated today should be taught to all students regardless of species. Kinetic transfer, momentum redirection, body position awareness. These are not biological advantages. They can be learned. D1 smiled slightly. We would be happy to help design the training program. Yalith's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a warm, golden color. I would appreciate that very much. Priya looked around at her classmates. 11 alien students from 11 different worlds, all staring at the 3 humans with new eyes. Yesterday they had seen weak primitives from a harsh planet. Today they saw something different. Today they saw teachers. There is one thing I want everyone to understand, Priya said. Her voice was calm but carried through the silent chamber. We are not special. We are not genetically enhanced or biologically superior. Everything we did today, any of you could learn to do with proper training. The only difference is that humans have been training for this our entire history as a species. She pushed off from the platform and floated toward the exit. We get underestimated a lot. We are used to it. She paused at the door and looked back at Commander Yalith. We are also used to proving people wrong. Then she was gone, floating down the corridor toward the living quarters. Lucia and D1 followed, leaving behind a classroom full of students and one instructor who would never look at humans the same way again. 1 week later, Priya stood at the front of the Academy auditorium. Commander Yalith floated beside her, and together they faced a new class of students. 50 young beings from across 12 star systems, all watching with curious eyes. Some things had changed quickly at the Galactic Transit Academy. Word of the human performance had spread through the station within hours. By the next morning, instructors from other departments were requesting copies of the examination recordings. By the end of the week, the Academy director had approved a complete revision of the zero-gravity curriculum. And Priya Sharma, who had arrived as a student expected to fail, was now a co-instructor. Welcome to Zero-Gravity Movement Fundamentals, Yalith announced. Her bioluminescent patterns glowed warm gold, a color that her old students had never seen her use in class. This course has been redesigned to incorporate techniques that were previously overlooked. My co-instructor will explain. Priya stepped forward. She was still getting used to being called an instructor, but the nervousness she felt was familiar. It was the same feeling she used to get before competitions, and she had learned long ago to use that energy instead of fighting it. Most of you have been taught that zero-gravity movement requires thrusters, she began. External propulsion, equipment. This is true for basic movement, but for advanced movement, for emergency situations, for any moment when your equipment might fail, you need something more. You need to understand how your own body can become a propulsion system. She demonstrated by pushing gently off the wall. Without activating any thrusters, she floated across the front of the auditorium, redirected herself off the opposite wall, and returned to her starting position. Every surface is a launching point. Every object you touch can redirect your momentum, and most importantly, every throw or push creates an equal reaction in your own body. She pulled a small ball from her pocket and threw it toward the back of the room. Her body moved slightly backward. Newton's laws work everywhere, not just on planets. In the front row, Osgoth raised one of his tentacle appendages. Instructor Sharma, my species has natural gas jets for propulsion. Would these techniques still benefit us? Priya smiled. A week ago, Osgoth had suggested she needed special accommodations. Now he was asking genuine questions with genuine respect. Yes, gas jets are powerful, but they are also limited. They run out of fuel. They can malfunction. These body-based techniques work as long as you have a surface to push off from. They are a backup system that every species can learn. She spent the next hour teaching basic exercises, how to push off from a wall at different angles, how to redirect momentum using only your arms, how to throw objects to propel yourself in the opposite direction. Simple things that human children learned in gymnastics classes, but that alien students had never considered. Osgoth struggled at first. His gas jets activated automatically whenever he felt himself moving in an unwanted direction. But slowly, with patient instruction, he learned to override those instincts. By the end of the session, he could push off from a wall and reach a target without using any jets at all. Strange, he admitted afterward. My body wants to do the work for me, but when I make myself move manually, I feel more in control. That is the point, Priya said. External tools are helpful, but they can fail. Your own body never fails unless you do. After the class ended, the students filed out. Most of them were talking about what they had learned, practicing small movements in the corridors, experimenting with momentum in ways they never had before. One student stayed behind, a young human woman, perhaps 19 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid. She floated near the door, looking nervous. Instructor Sharma, her voice was quiet, uncertain. Just Priya is fine. I'm still getting used to the instructor title. The young woman smiled slightly, but the nervousness remained. I almost dropped out of the academy last week. After Commander Yalith's lecture about humans failing in zero gravity, I thought maybe I was not meant for this. Maybe the data was right about us. Priya floated over to her. What changed your mind? I watched your examination. Recording, everyone watched it. And I thought, if she can do that, maybe the data was wrong about all of us. Priya put a hand on the young woman's shoulder. Physical contact was important for humans. It grounded them, reminded them they were not alone. They will tell you humans do not belong out here, Priya said. They will show you studies and statistics and historical data. They will explain in great detail all the biological reasons why you should fail. She gestured toward the zero-G chamber visible through the auditorium window. Smile, nod, and then show them what a million years of climbing trees, swimming rivers, and tumbling through the air taught us. The young woman's eyes brightened. Some of the nervousness faded. Gravity was just practice, Priya continued. All those generations of our ancestors, throwing spears and swinging from branches and diving into water, they were all practicing for this. Zero gravity is not our weakness. It is what we were training for all along. We just did not know it until we got here. She released the young woman's shoulder and floated back toward the center of the room. Now go practice, push off some walls, throw some objects. Learn what your body can do when gravity is not holding you down. And when the next examination comes, show them what humans are made of. The young woman nodded. She pushed off from the doorframe and floated down the corridor with new confidence in her movements. Priya watched her go, then turned to look out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were building colonies on distant worlds. Human ships were exploring uncharted space. Human soldiers were training for battles that might never come. And everywhere they went, they were being underestimated, dismissed, written off because of old data and outdated assumptions. That was fine with Priya. Being underestimated was practically a human tradition at this point. And proving people wrong was one of humanity's favorite activities.